Hi green lovers! Today I am going to show you how to sprout 3 different types of microgreens using jars, mason jars if you will. So all you need for this is a few jars of various sizes. I usually use a bigger jar for my mung beans, and then not so big a jar for my mustard greens, and the smallest jar for my alfalfa sprouts. So I typically use the cover of the mason jar with, I just had this mesh lying around, so I cut a piece of it and I put it here. But really you can use anything to cover these jars. You can use just a little piece of thin fabric is what I've got here, or you can use cheesecloth, just put a rubber band around it, and that's what you would use to cover it. But the first step is just the soaking, and you need to soak them for 8 hours. So I've got about 2 tablespoons of alfalfa, 2 tablespoons of mustard seeds, and I have got 10 tablespoons of mung beans that I am going to be leaving overnight, and that will be approximately 8 hours if I get my 8 hours of sleep. And then first thing tomorrow morning, I'm going to show you what I do next. Hi green lovers, so it is the morning after I soaked these last night, and as you can see they have swelled up quite a bit in size. I'd say this is about double. These mung beans are about double the size that they were when I soaked them last night, and the level has obviously risen in this jar. Now this is the most important thing that you need to worry about when you are growing sprouts, is you do not want fermentation to set in, because that is the death of the seeds. So I don't know whether you can see this, but you can see little bubbles starting to form. Well, that is fermentation setting in. So if I were to tell you the single most important thing that you need to keep in mind when sprouting seeds, is that you need to be ahead of fermentation. So what I will be doing is I'm going to go ahead and strain out the water, and I'm going to give it one more rinse for each of these, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to prop them in order for the water to not accumulate and cause fermentation. Okay folks, so these are all rinsed. And as you can see, I have covered each of them with, this one has some kind of a thin fabric, this one has its little built-in mesh, and this one I've used that same mesh, but I've used a rubber band to tie it. And I washed these a few times, so until the water ran clear I rinsed them. You absolutely do not want any of the previous water to remain, so I washed it thoroughly, and at least 3 rinses for each of them. And I've propped these. As you can see, the water is already starting to drain. Now what I'm going to be coming and doing is every 8 hours or so, and this is really important, every 8 hours or so you have to do a rinse. Now you don't have to do as thorough a rinse as I did just now, but just using a stream of water to pour it directly on the mesh. You don't even have to remove it, and shake it a couple of times and then pour out the water, and then come and prop it back like this. And you're going to go through this process every 8 hours or so of rinsing. Of course you don't have to wake up in the middle of the night, but for last thing during the day, first thing in the morning kind of thing, go ahead and rinse these and put them back. And when I put them back propped like this, I try to get them to, as much as possible, to kind of stick around the edges. That helps with the airflow as well, which is really important for it to not start to ferment and go bad, because that is probably the biggest thing that can go wrong in this process, is you are not rinsing it roughly every 8 to 12 hours or so, and it starts to ferment and it starts to degrade and the bacteria starts to form, and that is the end of your sprouts. So make sure that you rinse regularly. The other thing that you need to do is, until it, throughout this 5-day process, you do need to give it some level of darkness. So what I do is I just throw a paper towel on it, and I leave it on my kitchen counter, and keep that rinsing process going. So today is the first day. I'll show you what it looks like tomorrow. Hi green lovers, it's day 2 and I wanted to show you how my sprouts are doing. So I washed them a couple of times yesterday, rinsed them out thoroughly, drained them completely, and put them back to in this sort of angled position here. As you can see, the alfalfa is sprouting like crazy. It's one of the fastest growing sprouts that I have ever grown. The mustard, I see a little tiny bit of sprouting here and there, but let's give it another day. I am hoping that the seeds are viable. It looks like some of them are at least, but we'll see. I just got those from the Indian grocery store. And here are my mung bean sprouts. They seem to be starting to sprout quite nicely. So I'm going to rinse them out thoroughly and put them out here to drain again, and we'll check back in tomorrow. So today is day 3, and here is the progress on the sprouts. As you can see, the alfalfa sprouts have completely filled the jar, and they're pretty much ready at this point. What I like to do is give them one more rinse, take them out, put them in some kind of a wide mouth container, and then leave them on a sunny windowsill, and that will let them green up a little bit, get some of that chlorophyll action going, and increase the nutrition value. I do that for maybe a day, and they become nice and green, and then they're ready to store in the refrigerator. The mustard greens, whoa! The mustard greens, they're sprouting. Again, they're obviously much slower than alfalfa, and I'm not sure whether the seeds were as great from a viability perspective, so that's another factor. But as you can see, there's quite a bit of sprouting going on. I'll see how long this takes to actually grow to size, but do not expect it to be as proliferous as the alfalfa, mainly because I think the seeds were not that great. So yeah, get good seeds and be sure about the quality of them if you're going to go through this process. That's a good lesson learned here. And then the last one is the mung beans. They're continuing to grow, and they are filling up this jar quite nicely. I am actually going to be transferring these to a bigger container as well, because once they get to this stage where they're really starting to compact against each other, it gets very hard for them to get the airflow that they need in order to grow properly. So this will be going into a bigger container as well. Okay, so we're all set for the next step. Now, the mung beans, I actually like eating them just at this stage. To me, they're perfect. Once they start to grow a little bit more, they start to get a little bit bitter. And yeah, you can make these, you can sort of lightly stir fry them, just sprinkle them on salads, eat them raw. They're really delicious at this stage. But these, I do like to have them get just a little bit of green in them, so I will be letting this sit in a brighter location. And yeah, my mustard seeds, let's give it another day or two and see how much I can get out of this. Hi green lovers, today is day 4 of the microgreens sprouting, and I wanted to show you the status. So what happened yesterday with the alfalfa sprouts is they were pretty much done, and I wanted to green them up a little bit, so I put them on a windowsill which had indirect sunlight, and that greened them up nicely, as you can see. So these are done, and last night I actually put these away in the refrigerator because I didn't want it to grow any more than this. The mung beans, on the other hand, these are at the stage that I like them, and they're just sprouting, so these got refrigerated as well. Now, I will tell you that this is not something that you can put on a sunny windowsill to green up. You actually have to have some kind of medium, like soil that they're sitting in if you want them to actually develop some leaves. So no, don't try to green these up. As soon as they're the right size, put them in the refrigerator if you're using this method, which is growing them without soil. And then the last, which is a pleasant surprise for me, is my mustard greens. Now, I was worried that these were not viable because the seeds were taking long to germinate, but as you can see, they are all germinating nicely. They're just a day or two behind the alfalfa. The alfalfa is by far the fastest growing seed. So yeah, this is the end of my microgreens growing experiment. I'm going to let these grow in the jar for another day with the same method, washing, rinsing, 2 to 3 times a day. I'm going to let them grow just a little bit more, and then I'm going to put them in the refrigerator. So I wanted to share with you a few tips, a few reminders, and also a few things that I learned along the way. So the first thing, and this is more a reminder, the most important thing, in my opinion, is you have to keep them fresh. In other words, wash, rinse 2 to 3 times a day. That is the most important step to prevent them from developing fungus or going rotten. The second thing is, as I was mentioning several times during the past few days, make sure your seeds are viable. Now, I just used some mustard seeds. I use them in my cooking all the time, so I just used what I had on hand. But I got lucky. They're growing. I sometimes am not lucky, like especially with my coriander seeds. I try to grow those from the stuff that I get in the store, and very often they don't sprout. So yeah, mustard seeds, it looks like they're doing okay. So make sure that you're getting from a good, reputable source. Organic seeds are best. And don't get discouraged if you see even a few of them growing. Let them grow for another day or two. They may surprise you and all start to grow beautifully, just like these mustard greens are growing. The third tip is I talk about putting them on a sunny windowsill to green up, but this was something that I learned along the way. Don't put them on a hot sunny windowsill because these are young greens. They are actually mostly roots, and those roots are going to fry and burn pretty quickly. So put them in indirect light just for a few hours, maybe 8 hours or so tops, and then just put them away. You can either refrigerate or freeze them, which is my fourth tip. As soon as they're at the right stage, you want to store them. And you can store these for about a week or so, but they need to be refrigerated. So the alfalfa, I don't go through them fast enough. I actually would freeze about a half of these, and then I'd use the rest on sandwiches, sprinkle on my salads, etc., etc. And the frozen ones go beautifully in smoothies. The mung beans, I actually eat a little bit of it fresh, and then I stir fry. That's how I cook them. And then once you stir fry them, you can store them, 2, 3, 4 days in the fridge and eat them every day. So my last and final tip is don't give up. There can be many things that go wrong in the process of learning the art of growing microgreens. As an example, like I shared with you, the alfalfa sprouts, this is my fourth time. The first couple of times I tried them, they actually rotted, and the main reason was because I was not rinsing out the water and not draining it properly. So there are many reasons that things can go wrong. Viability of seeds is another possible reason. And you just forget. You put the greens on your counter, or you put them in your pantry, and they're out of sight, out of mind. You forget, they go bad. So you got to develop a system, and then once you've got it figured out, you can do that repeatedly and have success every single time. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something new. And until next time, live green and love your greens.